Now, to convince them and to hopefully enlighten you further about the strategies of economic aggression that DOD references in its report, I want to walk through this chart over here, which is basically a chart. It's in the spirit of one picture is worth 1,000 words. In this case, one chart basically encapsulates the entire industrial policy of the People's Republic of China. If you understand this chart, you not only understand what China is doing to us in the world, you will also understand why it's so difficult to undo what they are doing to us. And so, what you have on this chart at the top is the 6 strategies of economic aggression they pursue. This is intuitive. This should ring a very harmonious note with you. You will understand this immediately. What do? They protect their markets. They attack global markets. They go around the world trying to secure resources in places like the Congo for cobalt or Chile for copper. They seek to dominate traditional manufacturing, which what I would say is pretty much check that box at this point. And most importantly, the last 2 columns are the 301, Section 301 problems. Column 5 is to acquire the technologies and intellectual property of the world by any means necessary for the purpose in column 6 of capturing the emerging industries of the future, artificial intelligence, robotics, everything in between, the kinds of industries going forward where our sons and daughters and their children will find the good jobs at good wages in the future economy. And then the left column going down, I call it my Paul Simon chart, the 50 ways basically to leave the American economy behind. These consist of more than 50 acts, policies, and practices, many of them documented in that historic USTR report that I referenced earlier. Over 50 ways that China basically pursues its strategies of aggression. High tariffs. 25% on autos versus 2.5% here. High non-tariff barriers. Things like having indigenous standards for products so that we can't sell into their market. Currency manipulation. There's a great debate now whether China's manipulating their currency. I'll tell you 2 things about that. First, what we know is that since March of 2018, when tariffs were imposed on China, we saw a fairly dramatic drop in their currency. Who knows if that's a coincidence? But what is undisputed is that from about 2003 to 2014, China is generally regarded by both the right and the left, by the Peterson Institute, Economic Policy Institute, you couldn't have two institutes more far apart, that China was the worst currency manipulator of any country in the world. Cyber theft and traditional espionage go hand in hand in China. Forced technology transfer, and I'm not just talking about a company going over to China and having to surrender their current technology in order to have access to the market. It's much worse than that, much worse. Now it's like, okay, you want in our market, you also got to bring your R&D over. And when you bring your R&D over, you're basically bringing over the rest of your manufacturing, and you're basically leaving your country behind. That's what China does. Massive subsidies, state-owned enterprises conquering the world, predatory debt financing. I mean, did anybody's head spin around 360 degrees when China foreclosed on the port in Sri Lanka and took control of that? Did anybody notice that? Malaysia is a colony. Sri Lanka is a military outpost. This is what's going on here. The list goes on, and here's the point. Here's the point. If you think about the art of the deal with China, even if you take 25 of those things off that list. Even if, and they're all structural, right? This is not about buying more soybeans or more coal. This is not about that. This is structural change. Even if you take 25 of those off, you still have 25 left, and that probably would be still enough to hurt us. But there's other difficulties here. We went on a trip, road trip. Let's go to Beijing and negotiate with the Chinese. So we sit across the table with the Chinese team, right? And it's like we put our demands down. They were like tough demands. They were a long list of demands, like all this structural stuff. It kind of looked like the chart here, right? And so what do we hear? Well, we don't engage in cyber theft. We're the biggest victim of cyber theft. Oh, we don't force technology transfer. That's not our. I mean, how do you have a deal with somebody if they won't even acknowledge your concern? I mean, it's Alice in Wonderland. But here's another problem. I mean, think about this. What's the difference between the Soviet Union and the Chinese model? I mean, they're both like state-run economies, right? State-controlled economies. China may have a little bit more market stuff in it, more a little capitalist element, but at the end of the day, they're state-directed. Soviet economy was a mess. How does China be profitable? You know the answer, right? They steal stuff. They take the technology. If you're able to take the technology of the world and avoid the 10, 20, or 30% R&D expenditures that other companies have to spend every year, don't you think you're going to have a cost advantage? That's the difference. That's the difference. And so if China were to say, well, we're going to stop doing all that stuff, it would be left with an economy that would effectively lose its edge. And I believe that there's deep concern in China, that if they make the kind of structural reforms that are necessary for them to be reasonable, fair, and responsible citizens of the global trading system, they won't be able to compete. But the biggest problem is the trust issues. The trust issues. I got somewhere, the beautiful thing about working at the White House is you can like ask for stuff. So I said, okay, give me like all the things, all the instances where China has agreed to something and then not kept their promise. And I get like 5 pages back of stuff going back 30 years. It's like, it's frightening. I mean, Bonnie Glaser, right? She knows all about the South China Sea things, Scarborough Shoals, how we tried to make a deal with them, and we thought we had a deal, and now China owns Scarborough Shoals. Of course, coming into the World Trade Organization in 2001, they're serial violators of every single principle of the World Trade Organization. The one deal we made with them after Mar-a-Lago, the one substantive deal was like the beef deal. They're going to buy more American beef. Where's the beef? Where's the beef? The game that China has played, and they played people in the Bush administration like a violin, is to do the tap dance of economic dialogue. That's all they want to do. They want to get us to the bargaining table, sound reasonable, and talk their way while they keep having their way with us. And this is, I mean, look, here's all you need to know when you think about the prospect of a deal, okay? We had a high-ranking member of the Chinese government agree with Barack Obama on 2 things back in 2015. 2 things, okay? The Chinese official agreed to no militarization of the South China Sea. Within 2 years, those artificial islands were armed to the teeth. The second thing that official agreed to was to stop hacking American businesses. The weird thing about that, I remember watching that press conference and watch President Obama joke about the fact that he wasn't going to crack down on China stealing all our weapon systems, which they have done with aplomb. I mean, every single weapon system, pretty much, they've hacked into. I mean, the Chengdu fighter is basically a clone combo of the F-35 and the F-22, and we can't even afford to build F-22s, and meanwhile, they're grinding them out like crazy in Chengdu, ergo the Chengdu fighter. So Obama jokes, he goes, everybody hacks defense, but the Chinese have promised to stop hacking at least our businesses. Yeah, well, that lasted about 6 months. And now the U.S. government will tell you unequivocally that those hacks are back up, they're serious, and they're coming to get us. So the point is that if you think about a deal, it's been great having the President and Ambassador Lighthizer work with the Koreans. We were able to renegotiate. We were able to renegotiate with Canada and Mexico in a deal, and we can trust them. We are entering into negotiations with Japan. We are in the process of negotiating with Europe. We're negotiating with everybody around the world, people that we can trust if there's a deal. But when it comes to China, it's sui generis. So I would again say, Wall Street, get out of those negotiations. Go to Dayton, Ohio. Bring your Goldman Sachs money to Dayton, Ohio, and invest in America. The President of the United States does not need